Now we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Sue. I'm a program assistant here at the Elmhurst Public Library. And I am going to launch a poll right now that's just asking how many people are watching on your device. And if you wouldn't mind answering that, that does help us with our attendance numbers. If you do have any questions as we go along, please type them into the Q&A or the chat. You'll find both of those options in the Zoom menu. And then I would like to introduce you to our presenter today. Jeff Hoffmann and his family have lived in Elmhurst since 2001. In 2017, at the age of 48, he quit his job and enrolled full-time at Columbia College in Chicago to pursue a master's in fine arts in fiction writing. In January 2020, shortly after graduating, he was signed by a literary agent. Soon after, his agent sold his debut novel, Other People's Children, to Simon & Schuster. It was published in April of 2021 under the name R.J. Hoffmann. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to just welcome everybody to the session. Please enter into the chat or the Q&A any questions you have, and Sue will interrupt me. I'd love to make it as interactive as possible. And so just to kind of level set, by the way, my name's Jeff. They decided, Simon & Schuster decided my name should be RJ when they published my book. There's long stories behind all that, but we can talk about that in the Q&A later on if you want. From a agenda perspective, I kind of wanted to share what I'll talk about and what I won't talk about. First, I won't discuss how to write, what to write about, what you do after you publish. All those things are wonderful things to discuss. But I'm going to talk about what I wanted to know the most after I finished my novel, and how to get it published, right? And there's three things that I'm going to talk about there, and one is how I prepared to query my novel long before my novel was complete, the way I went about querying it, and how the process played out through acceptance. So there are many routes to get your work published, and I'm only going to talk about one, I guess, is the point of this slide. And that's not because I don't value the others. It's because I don't know anything about them. I went one route, and that's what I learned. And a lot of what I'll talk about is my perceptions of what worked. I still feel, still gives me goosebumps to realize that I got a book published by a New York publishing house, and so I've tried to piece together what I think worked. Nobody's really told me that what I think worked was the case, but I'll do my best. First, a little bit about the story. So in 2017, I started my MFA at Columbia College and studied fiction writing. I finished in December of 2019. With my MFA, I had one final class to finish up. My novel, which was my thesis, was finished towards the beginning of that last semester. So, September of 2019, really. I started to query in September. I sent it to 45 agents, and when I don't feel like Columbia did a very good job of telling us how to query. They said to find the writers that you like the most and find out who their agents are. And I found very quickly that the writers that I liked the most, or half their agents were dead, and the other half were not accepting queries because they weren't looking for debut authors. I 7 requested the full manuscript. I'll talk a little bit later on about what the query included. I'll talk a little bit about it right now. The queries, most of the agents request 10 to 20 pages pasted into the email with the query letter. And then most of them ignore your query letter if they don't like it. A few of them respond to it, and a few request the entire manuscript. So there were 7 that requested it, which was higher than I expected. 6 rejected it. There's one, Harvey Klinger, who he requested changes in October, and I made those changes into December, even as I was querying other agents with the original manuscript, and then delivered a final version to him in early January. He signed me, and then a week later, we had to deal with Simon & Schuster. So that was kind of the lightning strike week. And then this past April, in the heart of the pandemic, the Other People's Children was released. So real quick about the book, it is, oh, it's right here. Look at this. Isn't that wonderful? I still kind of like touching my book. The Other People's Children's about, it's I call it literary suspense, or a market suspense. It's about a couple that moves to Elmhurst from downtown Chicago as they decide to have babies, and they struggle through infertility, and they decide to adopt. And after they go through several failed attempts at adoption, they end up bringing a baby home. At the same time, the Carly, the birth mother, is she chose the Gail and John Durbin to be the parents, and then the adoptive parents, and then she, through pressured by her mother, decided to reclaim the baby after the Durbins already had the baby home. And then, of course, mayhem ensues. So that's a little bit about what happened, and now I'm going to dive into a little bit of. I'm really going to kind of go into the weeds, to be honest with you. I'm going to try to stay away from broad pronouncements and talk to you about some of the tools that I used to get to the agents. One thing before I do that, though, I think the good news is that I didn't know anybody. I went about it the old-fashioned way, sending emails to agents, and the good news is that still works, right? You don't have to work in a magazine or have a bunch of connections in New York to make it happen. So the people I've told that tend to take solace from that. So I'm going to start with my query letter, and I'm just going to point out a few things that I think were important to it. At the beginning is that hook, right? And they lost the baby on a Tuesday was how my prologue began. They actually cut the prologue in the editing process, but it was a good way to kind of reel them in, reel the reader in, and I also the reader of the query letter, and I also pointed out that the short story it was based upon was award-winning short story. So I think those two things, encourage them to read further. In the bottom of the query letter is your experience, your resume, if you will. And I worked hard on this. I've kind of been in sales and marketing all my life, and I've realized that publishing too is a business. And so they want to make sure that they are going to invest their time in something that doesn't suck. So that was my presumption. And so I spent a lot of time developing the publishing credits. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and how the data that I used in order to do that, in the process I went about to do that. It starts with the binder was the name of the original story, and that talk about the prize it won. Also, there was an excerpt from the novel. I called it an excerpt from the novel. It wasn't really that, but and that excerpt actually got stripped out by my agent after he read it the first time. But I think it was useful to point that out, as well as that it was shortlisted for the Missouri Reviews Prize. And then I specifically, as I was writing the novel, I kind of took a semester off and wrote short stories with characters from the novel, and with the sole purpose of being able to put this in my query letter. And so I got and a lot of those were just a character torn out of the novel, and then I tell their story. And a couple of one of the short stories was kind of an alternative take on what happened with Gail Durbin. And then, just some other writing credits. Some of these are nonfiction, creative nonfiction. Some I used some poetry references. So I was really, just kind of tossing out names of places that I had been published in. So I'm going to start by, I'm going to spend most of the time talking about the tools I used and the data that I used. But I'm going to start with, on the left-hand side is how I got short stories published and the data that I used to do that and the process that I used. And then after that, then I'll go into some of the data that I used to choose my agents and find the agents that were both reading and selling work to publishers. So first tool, if anybody that's been submitting into short stories to literary magazines has come across Submittable. It's kind of ubiquitous, it's the standard that everybody uses. It costs $3 per submission. I encourage you to put that aside as a just the cost of doing business. I think I probably submitted in the 2 years that I was in school. I submitted about 400, probably about 10 to 12 short stories, but I submitted to about 400 different magazines, and some of them multiple times. And so they tell you to on all of the on all the sites for the literary magazines, they tell you to make sure that you read a version of their magazine before you submit. But I decided to use the shotgun approach. And I don't think there was a short story that I submitted to less than 10 magazines, and I probably, the most was probably about 25 or 30. So I really, kind of carpet bombed. I did respect, there are very few magazines these days require or ask for a to be the only submission that you have. So the simultaneous submissions are pretty much very, very, very widely accepted. So and then I would withdraw from the places that I had submitted after I had gotten an acceptance. The Submittable also is kind of useful for tracking some of your submissions, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that more on DUOTROPE. So DUOTROPE was, I didn't use it for the first, I used various websites and just kind of random publishers weekly. I think I used their list for a while, but DUOTROPE is a gold mine of data. It has things like this, some of the top 100, top 25 kind of lists that help you find the places for the homes for your short stories or for your creative nonfiction or poetry, whatever it is. And but it also has a lot of detailed data. You can use this tool to search for publishers of fiction or poetry or nonfiction, and they have all kinds of selections that allow you to get the results. And then I think they have like 7,500 publications in this database, and the publications, the results will tell you what genres, the lengths that they accept, whether there's payment or not, and what that looks like, and also a kind of media, whether it's a print edition or an electronic website. They're publishing the results.
Jeff?
Yep.
Can I ask you, there's a question about how your query letter, was it attached or in the body of the email?
Almost everybody asks for it to be in the body of the email. Nobody wants an attachment unless they've requested it, because of because of security, right? Nobody wants to be clicking on random stuff coming into their inbox. And so not only is the query letter in the body of the email, but the first 10, 15, 20 pages of your novel or your book are also pasted into the email, which feels a little awkward at first, but as you're sending a 20, 25 page, 21 page email. But the reality is that's what they do. And then usually when they request, they ask for, they're specific. They usually ask for a Word document, occasionally a PDF or something else, right? Any other questions while I'm stopped? All right. So I'm going to dig into, so I just chose a publication, Craft, which is one of the things I used with this little, a couple things. Number one, they have to be open. All these literary magazines have reading periods, and you kind of need to start understanding a lot of them are related to universities, so summer is a real quiet time. A lot of them are open for a couple weeks. Many are open for a couple months. So understanding when they open is useful, and keeping data about that, about when they're open or when they're going to be open is useful. And that stuff I kept in an Excel spreadsheet to the side. Right next to the name of the magazine, though, is in DUOTROPE is the number of people that have favorited or starred, hit the star next to the name of the magazine. I use that as kind of a metric to define how well known the magazine was. And it seemed to track with what I knew about the magazines that I was dealing with. So, and what I did was I started with before I built up credits, because you need credits in the body of your query letter for the literary magazines as well. So I started with lesser known magazines with lower numbers, and what's a lower number? 50, anywhere between 25 and 100, I'd say, was kind of entry level mags. Some of there's a few that are in the thousands, and a lot of really good ones in the hundreds. And so I use that to kind of work my way up the chain of quality, and getting to just a few that were in the top 100 by the end. So also showing up on the Craft, the page for Craft is a number of detailed metrics about. And so when people submit to the users of DUOTROPE, and I encourage you to do this because there's lots of great tracking mechanisms for yourself, but after you submit to Craft, then you go into DUOTROPE and enter the fact that you've created a submission. And so then it has tens of thousands, maybe more than that, users who are tracking their data, and then they are able to present that data to you. So it tells you a couple things here. It tells you how long you're going to wait for this particular magazine. Some of them really fast, some of them not so much. And it also tells you how selective they are. Craft is pretty selective, accepting 1% of the acceptances. It also tells you the non-responses and the withdrawals. So withdrawals are usually when somebody gets something published somewhere else. And also there's a whole there's a whole discussion that you can have about the types of rejections that you get, and whether they were quality rejections or just kind of boilerplate. And the quality ones suggest that you should submit to that magazine again. So I won't spend much time on that though. At the bottom of the page, I found this really useful. These lists of work submitted here were also submitted to, and these end up being links to the page for the other magazines. And usually the work was also submitted to, that takes you to a higher level of magazine. And the bottom list is, you know, people that had their work accepted here, they also had their work accepted by these magazines. And so, you know, once you find magazines that you're after that are fitting the target where you're at in your career of submitting short stories, you can then find similar magazines that similar in tone, similar in the types of work that they're submitting or accepting. And then you also find them at a certain level, right? You'll find that, you know, the ones that show up on this list for craft are, you know, probably within a couple hundred points. They're a couple hundred points of that 367 number that I mentioned. So again, I'm very, I tried to be artistic in my writing. And then when it comes time to go after a place to publish the work, then it's time to bring the mercenary side of yourself out and the data side of yourself, and figure out where they're accepting work that's like yours, and then carpet bomb to increase your odds of being accepted. You can also dig into recent responses from the magazine that you are looking at. So these are actually individual responses that are listed for the last month. So you can see this gets useful when you're waiting. So one of the most painful parts of this is you're waiting somewhere between, you know, 1 and 6 months for most magazines. Some of the, you know, high end that none of us will ever get published in, you know, it's a couple years. And, you know, you probably need an agent in order to get published in them. But this list will tell you that not only in general, what's the response time look like, but it'll tell you whether they're reading right now, right? And just because they're open doesn't mean they're reading. And you start to get a sense, you know, if you start to get frustrated that you haven't seen a response yet, you can find out that nobody's getting a response, for instance. And so that's just a nice little feature to help you search through it. And then tracking your submissions. It's been a long time since I used this, so I didn't have submissions to show you, but it does give you a search mechanism to see all your submissions, see the ones that have been accepted, rejected, the ones that are still out are the ones that you usually spend the most time looking at. And it'll compare. There's a visual on the results screen that I again don't have here that will show you how the duration of your submission relates to the statistics that DUOTROPE has collected about the market over time. So you can find out that you know, you're 4 months after the typical response time. So you know what, they probably lost your submission or set it aside, and you're probably not going to hear from it, for instance. But you can also know that you need to be more patient when that number is bigger than the number associated with your submission. And that's it about DUOTROPE and short story submissions. Any questions about that you'd like to ask before I move into finding an agent?
Excuse me. How reliable is the data recorded by the publishers?
So I didn't count on DUOTROPE for I counted on DUOTROPE for data from submitters, basically, right? And then there's a link on each market's page that will take you to their website, and I spend more time on their website to get a sense for what kind of, you know, are they really open? Are they you know, what are they looking for? How I should submit, all of those kinds of things. I didn't on any of these tools that I look for. I found that there were inconsistencies between the submission protocols that were listed in DUOTROPE or Query Tracker, which I'll show you in a minute, and what I found on the market or the agent's website. Any other questions?
Jeff, there's a question, but I'm wondering if you're going to address it later or if it would be more appropriate for later in the presentation. Just a question about, or a statement about how it was quite a life changer to quit your job and then go back to school.
Yeah, sounds good. Why don't we save that one to the end?
Okay.
I'm sure it looks like we'll have time. I don't
Sure.
think I'll use the whole 50 minutes. So
Sounds good.
And then we can just talk about stuff like that, right? So next time I'm digging into Query Tracker. I had never heard of it. I forget how I found it. And you can search for publishers here as well. My hierarchy of trying to get my novel published was to start with agents, and then when I failed at that, then to go find the indie publishers that take submissions directly. The New York publishers don't take submissions directly, right? They only take agented work, and so my first tier of it was to focus on the agents, and that's all I can really speak to. So I didn't really spend any time with the publishers. This is $25 a year, and there's some premium features that I'll show you a few of them that are nice, that are worth that $25. So I think you're well served. So here's, and actually before I go too far into the weeds here, Query Tracker is like DUOTROPE, right? So actually there's let me back up a little bit further. There's two questions that I was asking myself about agents. Number one, were they reading and were they signing the writers? What kind of work were they looking at? A few questions. What kind of work were they looking for, and where did they spend their time? What genres were they most open to? But then, there was some agents that signed a number of writers, but weren't selling work. So I'm also going to talk about the database I used to pair up with Query Tracker. So Query Tracker is telling me who's reading and who is signing writers, and the publishers marketplace is where I was able to dig up information about which agents were actually selling books to publishers and what kind of publishers they were selling them to. So then I married that data in a spreadsheet and found out who was both reading and selling work, and those were the 45 that for the genre that I was targeting. Those were the 45 that I chose and submitted to. So first, there's just a few lists like this. Top most queried agents, top most requesting agents. That's nice. There's another list I'll show you in a couple minutes that gets into kind of response statistics that are pretty useful. For each agent then, so I just took the Andrea Somberg from the top of this list, and and I dug into her, and here's the reports that you get about this agent. So again, this is based upon writer submitted writers tracking their work in the database, which judging from the consistency of the data, the community's pretty, I felt like I could trust the data, I guess is a good way of saying it, that the community was pretty good about updating their submissions when they were accepted or rejected. So you get send receive report. I'll show you that, the query response times, the rejections, the word counts for manuscripts, the genres, and then some of the premium reports get into things like the agents with similar tastes, right, which helps you broaden your list, and your I'll show you some of the submission response time reports that you get down there. So this is kind of a pretty basic report. There's a series of icons that they use that speak to requests, which are definitely what you're looking for. There's a purple icon that is it shows up very seldom, and that's when the signings from the agents. And this was, I think, Andrea, I think it was I forget if this was all time or 12 months. You can choose your time frame so that you can get more recent data if that makes sense. And then you see how often they're actually requesting manuscripts. Sometimes they say send me the next 3 chapters. That would be a partial request, and sometimes they say send me your manuscript, and that's a full request. I don't think I got any partial requests. I think most of them just ask for the whole thing and then stop reading it when they decide that they don't like it. And then the rejections were they come in 2 categories. One, sometimes you don't get a response. Many times you don't get a response, closing a response. Occasionally you get a rejection. It looks like Andrea sends out rejections. Most agents don't. They just delete the email after they read the query letter and decide they don't like it. And so one thing to know is in this query tracker, once you create a submission and track your submission, it will compare, kind of like DUOTROPE, it will compare your submission age to the typical ages of both the requests, so the success, and the typical age of rejections when they come, if they're delivered by that particular agent. So that's useful. It's also very useful to know what kind of books they're going after. And again, all these reports, you can look at the last 3 months, the last month, the last year, the last, and also for all time, which I think goes back to about, I want to say 2008. It seems like this data goes back to. And so, and the list is a lot longer than this. It tells you not only what are what kind of things are they receiving, but it'll say where the rejections and acceptances are, more importantly, where the acceptances are higher. So you start to, and you go into it. I was submitting to literary, the literary category. There's probably a couple other categories that I could have put my book into. I really still haven't figured out how the publishing industry categorizes books. So obviously the genres like romance and horror, those are pretty easy to categorize for science fiction. But it gets into, I still have no idea what the difference between contemporary, commercial, upmarket, literary, how they draw the lines there. So this is a submission reply request, or the submission replies. You'll see this one shows that offer of representation. By the way, there's actually I'll leave that alone there, and I'll dig into this a little bit. This is one of the premium reports that they have that allows you to buy genre. So I selected literary fiction. Time frame, the last 12 months. I can see the agents. I can sort them by who received the most, who requested the most full, who has the highest request percentage, and really dig into who's reading, right? And so I start to create a list in a spreadsheet, and I'll show you that spreadsheet in a couple minutes, of folks that I'm interested in sending my manuscript or my query letter to in the beginning of my manuscript, based upon the fact that they are actually reading and responding. This is a cool little tool, and again, this is at the agent level. It's a timeline, and you'll see I selected one of those queries. This was a query that it looks like, so looks like about a week after they submitted it. That's the little lightning bolt. They requested a partial submission. That little paper clip shows you when the submission was sent, and then this unfortunately was rejected. It looks like about a month and a half later. And so you start to get a feel, and when you put your submissions into the system, your submission will also be you'll see it interleaved and highlighted within all of the other submissions. So you can kind of see most of them read generally in order, and I think when they get interested, they set it aside to spend more time on it. A lot of them respond very quickly with the responses, and again, some don't reply at all. Any questions about Query Tracker before I move on to the Publishers Marketplace?
Not specifically about this, but there is a question. Is it possible to pitch a self-published book to an agent? Any insight on that?
I don't know much. I'll share what I've heard, but I'll say don't count on me very much on this. I've heard that pitching a book to an agent that's been self-published it's important to have some momentum behind that book, right? That if you haven't sold much if you haven't sold much self-published, then you're going to have trouble getting an agent, because the publishing house is going to ask the questions, why isn't it moving, right? And so that's what I've heard, but again, I don't really know. Anything else before I move on?
No, that's it, Jeff.
Okay. So Publishers Marketplace. This one's a little more expensive. It's $25 per month. So you might want, I kind of waited until I was really ready to go after the agents, and then dove into it. So again, these are deals now, right? So it has no information about how many submissions there are. It has no information about how often they request or reject or assign new talent. But what it tells you is how many deals they do, and it tells you a lot of detailed data about those deals, if that matters to you as well. There is so you can understand. They used words like a nice deal, a major deal, and all of those. You can very quickly Google to find out what those words mean and how those get translated to money. So you can kind of understand what the advances look like for the deals. But more importantly for me was just to get an agent. I didn't care what size the deal was, right? So this shows you, this is the top 100, and it can again sort all this data by genres. The genres are a little bit different. There's no literary genre, so there's, I think, general other, which is a pretty big category, and that's where I ended up doing my searching for my book. So this tells you just that he's done 308. Kevin, I'm not sure how you say his name. He's done 308 deals overall. 21 in the last 6 months and 30 in the last 12 months. So gosh, if you can get Kevin Lyon to sign you up, he's probably going to sell your book. You'll find when you look at Kevin Lyon in the other tool I just mentioned, Query Tracker, you'll find that it's pretty tough to get signed by Kevin Lyon. He's not reading off the slush pile much. He's probably getting recommendations from some of his other writers, etc. So then you can dig into the details for each of these, and there's a whole bunch of data here that I'll kind of go through each. So it tells you which agency he was with when he did his deals, and so this is I think this is, it's deals in the last 12 months. So he's done 34, and they've all been with his the single agency. It tells you which editors he works with the most. Of course, this doesn't add up to 34, so there's a lot of one-off editors as well. It'll tell you that the top imprints. So those aren't necessarily publishing houses, but might be imprints within a publishing house. And then it also tells you the categories being genres, right? Actually, categories, when I say genres, I mean fiction, nonfiction, children's, but also within fiction, it'll break it down into the more classic genres. And it'll give you some contact information. Again, there is some submission guidelines in Publishers Marketplace, and some data about whether they're open for queries. I found that was not up to date, and always went to their website and searched their website. And then you can, by the way, I kind of printed or took a screenshot of this page. This is kind of on the bottom of the page that I was just looking at. You can filter that data. I have it filtered to the last 12 months, but you can just look at the big deals. You can look at it for all time. You can look at it for the last 6 months, and the top of it will change as well as the bottom of it. And the bottom of it actually goes through and has a description of the author and the title that was sold. And here's where they kind of use it, this Publishers Marketplace, to brag about their deals, and start the marketing engine for the book. So it's pretty complete. I found that I came to the conclusion, the uninformed conclusion, that everything that gets sold by agents ends up in here because it's self-serving to the agents to make sure it shows up in here. And then this is my spreadsheet. So this is the where I brought the data together. And one of the things that I put here is the agency. Most of the agencies are very strict about, do not pitch to 2 of our agents at once. Some of them say don't pitch to 2 of our agents ever, even after you get rejected from the first. But most of them say 1 at a time. And so and then I have the response rates. This is this data from Query Tracker, and then these 3 categories: the total deals, general other deals, and debut deals. They all come from Publishers Marketplace, and told me the deals that they were doing. So again, I could find out who's reading and who's selling, and then I just kind of did a quick summary of their guidelines. I found that I liked the ones that took a sample of the writing. I did not like the forms because they asked all kinds of information. It was kind of hard to, either you didn't really want to answer because it was like, well, tell me about your platform, yada, yada, yada. Also, they asked, often in those forms, they asked for comps or books that were similar to yours. And I always struggled with trying to find the right thing to say there. So so this was my kind of my master spreadsheet. And I think I had like 70 names on it. But a lot of them were in the same agency. So then I had to figure out who to pitch to and that kind of thing. Any questions about anything at this point?
Just that one question, just wondering about how, the change from, going back to school, but right now there's nothing else.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll just kind of share that. I'm 52 years old now, so you can tell probably from the gray in my beard. But so I was 47, 48 when I quit. I quit my job. So I quit my job, but I was able to do that because I had started right out of school. I had started a consulting company, an IT consulting company, and sold that about a decade later. And then my partner and I bought another one that we ended up selling. And so I benefited from all that to be able to focus on writing. And then it was wonderful for me. was able to go full time. So and I found the MFA program to be highly valuable. But I think it's really what you get out of it. If you don't have time to write and read a lot, then you're not going to benefit from the MFA program as much. You know, because I saw some of the people that I was in it with who were carrying full-time jobs, and they struggled to just get the work done. And if you're not writing a lot, then you're not getting much feedback, right? But it was great the feedback that I was able to get from, you know, published writers, published novelists that on my work I found very useful. And so what I did was, you know, I had kids in high school at the time, and so I definitely wanted to show them that I was working. I got up at, you know, 6:30, 7 o'clock. I wrote for you know, 4 to 6 hours, either on classroom assignments or the novel. I tried to make room for the novel pretty much all the time, except that semester I took off. And then I went to class 3 nights a week, and occasionally in the afternoon. And so it was wonderful. And during the summer I kept writing. I did find that, you know, I'm kind of an introvert, extrovert, kind of in the middle, and I found that I needed the interaction of others during the summers, because you know, I'd spend 4 or 5 or 6 hours in my room typing words, and then went to spend a lot of time trying to get people to go drink beer with me on Tuesday nights. I'm not sure if I answered that question, but it was wonderful. I always read. I was always a reader. I was not able to you know, write when I was working. Just that didn't work out for me, but it allowed me to kind of go after it.
I have a question from your spreadsheet. There was something called a G/O deals and debut. They were wondering what those meant.
So those were two of their categorizations within Publishers Marketplace. General Other is what I just shortened that to GO, and debut is they lump any debut book or any debut author is falls in the debut category, no matter what the genre is.
What were your methods to keep going when the rejections or non-responses were coming in?
You know, I kind of sold a lot in my previous life, and learned, and I took from that the old maxim that salespeople live by, is that each rejection, each time you get hung up on, is you're one step closer to an acceptance. You know, that said, it's very hard to wait, and nothing about publishing moves quickly. So a lot of it boiled down to just writing the next thing. I immediately started, you know, even before I sold the first novel, I started writing the second one, and the second one's being shopped right now, and I'm writing the third one. And so, or what I hope will be the third one if I sell the second one. You know, it's, and it was the same way with the short stories. I would get 15, you know, submissions on a short story, and then I'd pound until I pound the writing until I had another one that was ready. And you know, I guess it's my business background, but it was kind of like supply and demand. I was making sure I had the supply, the inventory, at the same time that I was making sure that I was getting it in front of people, because sending it out to 1 or 2 places is not a recipe for success, in my opinion, right? It's a numbers game, and somebody's going to like it if it's good, but a whole lot of people are going to say no to it, even if it is good.
Where did your idea come from? Find it interesting. You're a male and talking about babies. Think it's great. Crossing the divide. Did you have any issues?
Yes. So I think what Simon Schuster told me was it the fact that I was a male writing about really what became a novel about motherhood. It did not start that way. That was difficult to get publicity behind. And the novel, which I'm very happy with, and tens of thousands of people have read it, but it did not sell as aggressively as they had hoped it would. And so but I'm not sure that that's really the question you're asking. So there was that market. I think there's a reality that there's an owned story kind of vibe in the marketplace right now, that if you don't own the story, if you can't tie that to your identity, then it's difficult to get publicity, and then publicity is how you sell a bunch of novels.
What are you working on now?
I am writing a novel. So my second novel is about four men who get in a fight in the Burger King parking lot when they're 18 years old, and kill a man or kill another boy and maim another, and they get away with it, and their friendship falls apart, and they kind of come back together when one of them dies when they're 50, and truth, of course, emerges and problems surface. And the one I'm working on right now, I'm probably about 100 pages in, but still trying to figure out what it's about. It's nominally about a person who works in a gold store, buying gold from people in like 2012. He is divorced and has just decided to move in next to his ex-wife without her or her new husband's permission. And things happen. Right?
That sounds good. Jeff, we're going to start to wrap up. Would you like to share where they can find you online, or do you have a website or social media?
Sure. So if you search for RJ Hoffmann, rjhoffmann.com, RJ Hoffmann writes, I think. If you search for RJ Hoffmann on Instagram, you'll find me. If you search for RJ Hoffmann writer on Facebook, you'll find me. I'm also on Goodreads, of course. Yeah, so if you there's Other People's Children, that's a nonfiction book from a decade or so ago, that don't buy that one, or know what you're buying anyway. You can certainly, all the major outlets will sell you the book if Sue won't let you borrow it from the library.
Well, thank you so much. Before we do close out, in the chat, I have put the next program is going to be on originality, steering clear of cliche. And then there's also, Jeff is going to be back at 2:30 for a Q&A. So if you would like to, if you have more questions that we've run out of time for, please head back to our author page on our website and join Jeff and the Q&A. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Jeff. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And good luck to everybody on the presentation. I know how terrifying it can be to send your work out, but sometimes luck strikes. So good luck to you.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.